Well, welcome to this week's campaign catch-up. Joining me now, CBN's David Brody and John Stolnis, as always, to break down the latest of what's going on. And obviously, guys, the storm, Hurricane Milton, the second storm here in just a couple weeks that has come now and pummeled Florida, is, of course, taking center stage with all the conversation in both of the campaigns. How are we seeing them spin that on both sides of the aisle here? We'll start with you, John.
Well, you're seeing the Trump campaign hammering the Biden administration, saying that the response has been too slow, that they haven't been moving fast enough to help people there, that they are essentially not getting the aid out fast enough, that it's hard to find where FEMA is working in these different areas, and critical of the amount of money that FEMA is handing out initially. I know we talked about this on the previous campaign catch-up. There was a $750 initial payout to meet immediate needs, and then obviously additional funding can be paid after that. But at the moment it seems as though that's the tack that the Trump campaign is taking. That the Biden administration has been slow to respond, that they haven't moved with alacrity or any kind of urgency, to which, of course, the Biden administration is pushing back on that forcefully. They've been holding a number of press conferences, President with FEMA Director Criswell, President Biden, Vice President Harris. They've all been essentially saying they've been on the phone with the governors and that they're ready to react and do whatever they can to help. And I think FEMA in this case is essentially saying that they're going to basically be supporting the local emergency management efforts and then providing a backfill that way. But in terms of getting the money out and all of that, it's hard to tell exactly what the truth is on that, at least from where I sit. But that's kind of where both campaigns, both sides of the aisle are on this right now.
This is a hard situation for Kamala Harris to be in politically, because let's go back to 2012 when Superstorm Sandy hit. And President Obama went there running, of course, against Mitt Romney, but he was president. And he was running, he was doing his thing, and Chris Christie in there, they had like this political love affair for a month or so. And it helped. It helped him a lot, Obama. But he was president. That's what he's supposed to do. Kamala Harris, in this case, she's not president. She's VP. She's running for president. If this was Biden running, I think this would be a big moment for Biden. And it would help Biden if he handled it properly. And it was between 10 and 4, but that's a separate issue. But the point is that with Kamala Harris, she's kind of in no woman's land, if you will. I mean, what is she supposed to do? She's not VP. DeSantis is like, what's the point of taking her phone call? She's not involved in the chain of command, which is true. It's true. There's no reason he should be taking her call. And the only reason she would be calling is because, wait for it, she's running for president. And then, by the way, she's getting slammed on the other side for doing interviews like Howard Stern and Stephen Colbert while there's a hurricane bearing down. So she can't catch a break either way. I mean, I think it's kind of a tough situation for her to be in, because let's be honest, you can't hit her for not being there when she probably doesn't even need to be there in the first place. This is the president and FEMA and all of that. So but either way, it's a no-win situation for her, and it doesn't look good for the administration overall, and that goes right to her because she's part of it.
Yeah, and to your point, David, about her being sort of in a pickle here, it's, Biden comes out, and of course, he wants to talk about how he's bringing everybody together, and so as she's saying these things about DeSantis, Biden's like, well, the governors have all been great, and we've been communicating, and because, of course, he's the president, so he's wanting to communicate that he's communicating with these governors and getting the things that they need to help deal with this storm. So again, that puts her sort of in that awkward spot now where, she's trying to find things to criticize, but at the same time, her own boss, the president, is trying to show what he's doing. So like you said, it does seem to put her in this no-win situation at the moment.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt about that. And we've seen this from Biden a couple times here in the last week or so. I mean, some people, go ahead, more tinfoil. Boy, I just need tinfoil left and right here. I guess maybe more right, but maybe it's left. Anyhow, the point is that a lot of people are saying, he doesn't like what she did to him, along with Nancy and some others, in terms of the air quote coup that took place, and this is a little bit of retribution. I don't know if I buy that. I think I think he wants to make sure that Trump never becomes president. So I think you got to throw a little cold water on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry. I was just saying, and I think from Trump's perspective, he's kind of in a good position politically with this, because he doesn't have any responsibility right now with regard to cleanup, with regard to funding, with regard to allocating resources. He's not a governor of one of these states. He's not in office right now.
Right.
He doesn't have. There's the only skin in the game he has in this right now is politically, and so. He can basically be sitting from the stands and criticizing or critiquing, I guess is probably the better word, what it is the Biden administration is doing or is not doing. And so, I think for a real sense of exactly what kind of help the states are getting, I would listen to the governors, see what the governors are saying about the response so far. But I agree with David too. Like in some of these interviews and some of these group press conferences, Kamala Harris is kind of just it looks awkward. Like you can tell like she's there. She's there just because she's running for president, and that in any other instance she wouldn't be a part of those media interviews and gatherings.
And 2 seconds, just 2 seconds to tie it in a bow. Donald Trump loves being in that position. The armchair quarterback. I mean, that's made for Trump. Okay.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's talk a little polling here. John, we were just talking before the segment here that maybe just given some of the things we're seeing here in the last couple of days of the campaign that Democrats potentially could be concerned with some of what they're seeing. What makes you think that?
Well, obviously, it went from a certain Trump win against President Biden to a sea change of emotion and momentum heading towards Vice President Harris. And certainly, they are in a much better position than they would be if President Biden was still the nominee. That being said, a lot of that momentum seems to have stalled, which we probably should have expected. Momentum doesn't last forever, and the more she's been out there doing interviews, it's just there's a little bit more of an oversaturation. Kamala Harris burst onto the scene, and she was new, and she was certainly more exciting than the president, and so there was a lot of movement in that direction, and a lot of people whose main concern about Biden was his age now had a Democratic candidate that they felt better about. But that being said, now you're looking at some of these swing states. The Quinnipiac poll out this week in the Rust Belt states showed Trump ahead by 2 or 3 points in most of the different places. It's essentially, it looks like a dead heat in Pennsylvania, but Wisconsin and Michigan, they still look to be slightly more favored towards Trump at the moment. And I think what you're hearing from a lot of the political insiders who are privy to some of the private polling that's being done is they're worried about Kamala Harris's chances. They're concerned that she's not moving up faster, that she's not putting any distance between herself and Trump, or in these places where she's a little bit behind, she's not moving the needle. Despite hitting all of these battleground states, despite all of the interviews that she's doing, there just doesn't seem to be a movement of the needle at this moment. And I think they're concerned that they're looking at a 2016 Hillary Clinton type ceiling for Kamala Harris, that they're just, how many more gettable votes are there in these states? And are there enough of them for her to persuade and move past Donald Trump? I mean, I still think it's going to be a razor thin election, but Democrats are voicing concerns privately and publicly that there just doesn't seem to be any progress, any forward movement. The numbers are stuck in mud. And if that remains the case on November 5th, I think Trump wins.
The reason that the numbers are stuck in mud and they're not moving forward is because she's not moving forward. She's not moving forward with any policy. She's not moving forward with any substance. She's trying to do hope and vibes and joy. And that'll get you through a 2-week cycle, and that's about it. And then voters are going to want more. Even the media is going to want a little bit more, not much more, but they're going to want some more. And I think that's the main reason. But there are 3 things, Dan, that are very important to understand. Let's go to Quinnipiac. Okay. John mentioned that Trump's up in the 3 states. Okay, true. But it's even worse. And here's why. Because if you look at what Quinnipiac was doing about 3 weeks ago, back in September, Kamala Harris was up 2 or 3 points in each state. So if you do the math, it's a plus. I have it somewhere written, but I'll get it out here in a second. It's a +8 jump in Michigan to Trump in 1 month, +8. In other words, he's up 3 He was down 5. You put them together, he's up 8. The difference is 8. Plus right. A +3 swing in Pennsylvania and a +3 swing in Wisconsin. The point simply is it's not even about Trump being up. It's about the momentum and the pattern that's going on. You're seeing it slipping away from Kamala Harris in Quinnipiac. Okay, so you say Quinnipiac, Quinnipiac, Schminnipiac, who cares, right? So that's fine. Let's go to the internal polling. John mentioned the internal polling. There's something very important to understand between internal polling and media big kind of conglomerate polling. Media big conglomerate polling is more of a smaller sample size. It's not as detailed. The internal polling is a much larger sample size, and it really drills down specifically. In other words, you have a better sense in internal polling than you do the big media conglomerate polling. So all of the internal polling, according to Kamala Harris's people, and Trump's people privately say the same thing, but they don't want to really talk too much about it, is that the internals are even worse. And why are the internals worse? Because that's really the state of the race. So I would suggest that, once again, back to what I've said now for almost 3 weeks here, that I think we're heading towards a blowout. I don't think it's going to be that as close as people think. Everybody talks about razor thin, razor thin, razor thin. That to me is just on the surface of what we're being spoon-fed above the fold by a lot of these outlets, these media outlets with the polling. Once again, a snapshot in time. Okay, you can make the case, but if you actually go geek out and look at the internals, and it's not just the internal polling, but the actual crosstabs of all of these these big media polls. Inflation, economy, subset groups, it's not working for her. Yeah. So those are two really important elements. There was a third one, but of course, since I'm old, I can't remember.
Well, think about that one. Think about that because I just wanted to jump in. I mean, we might be going back to just it's the economy stupid. We might be getting to that point here. And to your point, John, when there was the switch, and then there was, it did improve the Democrats, and it's like then we were all wondering how long the basement campaign was going to go on, and maybe we were seeing sort of in real time in a much shorter window, sort of the unnamed Democrat, unnamed Republican phenomena play out, right? Like when there's an incumbent and they're like, well, how do they perform against the unnamed Democrat or the unnamed Republican? The unnamed person's doing great because they're like the figment of your imagination. They're the thing that you hope for, the thing that you think you might like. But then when the person actually gets out there, it looks like they tried to keep the Kamala momentum, the unknown Democrat momentum just going, like, right, here's the person that you think you want. And then she starts talking, and to John's point, maybe the message just is not connecting, and she needed to come out, and then that was the second punch. The first punch is the switch. Everyone's excited on the left. Now she needs to hammer it home and then really reel in those voters, get people excited. Yeah. And you're seeing even on softball interviews, like the Colbert interview, when I think we might have talked about this last time, but the Colbert interview where he's like, hey, you're viewed as the candidate of change. What's different about you and Joe Biden? And she basically says nothing is different. And so, yeah, where's the message? But is it that unnamed Democrat sort of phenomenon, John? And then it's just not connecting now?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was that, like I said before, if you were looking for a Democrat to vote for, you didn't want to vote for Trump. Now suddenly you had an option that of someone who you felt could at least have the mental faculties to do the next 4 years in office. So there might have been, in that polling initially, a hope that, hey, maybe here's somebody else that I can vote for if you're not wanting to vote for Trump or if you're looking for an alternative. I think here with Kamala Harris is, if it is about the economy, they've got to figure out a way to talk about this in a way that makes sense in terms of in terms of people's pocketbooks. Because I mean, the inflation numbers that came out today show year over year, we're getting closer to the 2% mark. It's been the lowest since I think it was February of 2021. But the prices that people were paying before the pandemic compared to what they're paying now are so different and so large that the year over year inflation improvement still doesn't resonate the way the pre-pandemic inflation is hitting people. And so, and there's nothing she can do about that. There's nothing that the Biden administration can do about that. Like, I think she's trying to tell the economic story of the jobs numbers and the inflation numbers and prices, coming, they're not crazy high in compared to where they were last year, and even month over month, gas prices have come way down, and all that you would think in a normal election cycle, hey, that's a decent economic story we can tell. People are still thinking about what they were paying for things before the pandemic hit, and wondering when the prices are going to hit those levels, and they're just not going to. And I don't know how she fights against that.
Well, and I think real quick, David, I think they just got to find, and maybe they just haven't found it yet and they're searching. But remember when Obama, when he had the high unemployment, what did he say? He said, we've had more jobs saved or created, which was essentially just a made up number, but he made it sound plausible to a whole lot of people. And they said, oh yeah, we've saved or created a lot of jobs, right? But at least the point is, at least they sort of settled into a narrative here. To your point, John, it just feels like they're just saying stuff and there's nothing really logically, making sense there.
Yeah, the problem is the Bureau of Labor Statistics campaign strategy doesn't work. In other words, if you're going to cite stats and do PDF documents and do a flow chart, ain't going to happen. It's a visceral feeling of how people are feeling in the country. And the visceral feeling is not good. It's like visceral fat, not good for the country. Hey, a couple of things on Kamala Harris. Pro tip on watching a Kamala Harris interview. Do you notice how she starts out most of her interviews when asked a question that she does not really know the answer to, or she doesn't have much to give? She'll say, well, let me start here. When she ever says, let me start here, she says that on pretty much every question. You know what that means? That means she doesn't really want to start there, as in what the question was, number one. And then if you actually listen to her, it's aspiration and dreams, aspiration and dreams. She's a middle-class kid. Got it. You're a middle-class kid. Though Trump says she didn't work at McDonald's, she did, whatever. I don't really care. The point is that enough with the middle-class kid and the aspiration and dreams. And that's why her numbers are sinking. Sometimes it's just that simple, guys. Sometimes it's just that simple.
And if I think I'm not a member, I'm not on her campaign, obviously. But if I were, what I haven't seen her do that I have seen other candidates do, and maybe this is just the nature of the fact that she got in it late, she needs to be sitting down with small groups of people, and whether these are televised or whether these are, whatever, small groups of people, talking to them about, and really talking in layperson terms, like getting 5 or 6 people from Johnstown, Pennsylvania together for a small roundtable and having a televised conversation about what they're going through, like what the price differences are like. It's like, hey, I and to not say like things are down such 0.7%, like you're saying, right. you can't do it. Like
you got to personalize it.
I know eggs. Isn't it crazy how eggs are up $1 in the last 2 months? Yeah,
but here's I totally agree with you, by the way. Here's the problem. Clinton, remember him with the thumb in the air? I feel your pain. I feel your pain. Okay, so you're saying do the I feel your pain strategy. Here's the problem. Clinton had the thumb and the I feel your pain and 11 policy prescriptions. Okay, Kamala Harris has 0. You know what? They're going to build some houses and that's going to solve the economy problem. What? So the point is, when the details, when they start to go to the second and third question in those 5 or 6 person town halls or whatever you want it to be, when you start to drill down, she's nowhere. It's back to aspirations and dreams. And people are not stupid. I mean, some are. Let's be honest. I'm being honest. Some are. Some really are. I don't mean stupid in like an insulting way. I just mean like low information voters. But the truth of the matter is that even they understand, hey, man, I've heard that already, aspiration and dreams. Don't play me a line. Come on. I feel like Biden. Come on, man. Anyhow, I'm done.
Well, and this is where political instinct really matters. And,
yes.
Trump has very good political instincts most of the time on like what to say to his base. And, Obama had those sorts of instincts. Clinton had those sorts of instincts of saying the things that, people were feeling. And, maybe there's a reason that Harris didn't make it out of Iowa when they were running the primaries, right? And she was one of the first ones, if not the first one, out of the primary when they were going. Maybe she just doesn't have that skill, but here she is in this position.
Yeah, and I think neither candidate right now is really trying to do anything other than just kind of get the base out at this point. I'm looking at Trump's schedule for the next few weeks. He's going to be keynoting a Second Amendment speech with the NRA. He's going to be with Charlie Kirk's political action group next week speaking. I mean, they're certainly going to the battlegrounds. They're certainly, but the people who are in the battlegrounds that they're going to, they're all their supporters, and they're going to be big speeches and stuff. And I think the candidate who can try to hit those, get a little bit more of a personal political instinct with people and distill it down person to person. We are in an election here where it really is going to come down to person versus person, word of mouth. It just they both really need to do that. Although Harris, since I think she's behind, generally speaking, the onus is on her really to change things.
Can I just mention one last thing? Potential good news for Kamala Harris. Let's give her something here. I mean, come on, we've been kind of beating her up analytically, at least. Look, college-educated voters. She obviously needs to do well with them. That's her bread and butter, specifically on the abortion issue. We knew 2022 was much better for Democrats than everybody thought because of that issue and because of those college-educated voters. The problem here is that this is a presidential election. It's not 2022, and midterms have lower turnout than a presidential election. So that's not good. It might not be the same model. But she needs college-educated voters. And here's where I'm going with this. In 1980, the amount of college-educated voters was just 21%. 21%, that's it. Today, that number is 41%. It has increased by 20%. She has a larger pool to play in. That's good for her. Trump, meanwhile, his base, those Rust Belt, or call them whatever you want, the white, non-educated voter, the hill country crowd, if you will, whatever it is, they're decreasing. They're decreasing in this country. So Trump's got to get a lot of those people out because they're decreasing. And Kamala Harris has to get a lot of college-educated people out, but she's playing in a larger pool. So, John, you're the stats guy. But I mean, if you put it all together, at least on paper, it makes her job easier. Having said that, aspiration and dreams. That's all I got to say. All right, that's all.
All right, well, gentlemen, that was a lot to digest there. A big weekend coming up. I guess all of them will be big here in the last just couple weeks here, but I would imagine by the time we talk again on Monday, there'll be a whole lot more to chew on. So we'll be looking forward to catching up with you again and do it all over on Monday, but I appreciate you being here to break it all down. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.